Hello everyone and welcome to this series of Learn C# in 100 hours. So this is a complete beginner's tutorial, and in this beginner's tutorial we'll try to see that how we can become a C# professional, a C# developer. Now before I start with C# and its fundamentals, let us try to understand that what does it take to make a C# developer? What things are needed to make a professional C# developer? So here is a flow of what things you need to learn to become a C# developer. So first thing is you need to start with fundamentals, right? Fundamentals like CLR, CTS, code access security, delegates, events, and data types, value types, reference types. So basically this first part is where the fundamentals are, and it's the most important part. The next is object-oriented programming concepts like interfaces, polymorphism, abstract classes, and so on, followed by SQL, followed by data access layer technologies like ADO.NET and Entity Framework. So this first section, these first 5 sections are the building blocks which can help you to create projects. So if you don't know these 5 things, it is very difficult that you can go and create a project. Once you're done with this, after that comes, okay, so now what? Like, do you want to become a web developer, right? Do you want to become a Windows developer, or do you want to become a mobile developer? It all depends, right? So let me talk about the web track, which would be the most, that's where the most jobs are actually. So in the web track, the first thing is you need to know HTML and JavaScript, right? And after that, in Microsoft, you have 2 ways of doing web programming. One is the old web forms and the new one is MVC, right? So this is the web track. And in case you are doing the Windows track, then you have Windows, and then you have again 2 flavors in that. One is WPF and the other is WinForms. Also, one track which is missing out in this diagram is the mobile. So again, for mobile, you have something called a Xamarin. So the point is that if you say that a person has to become a C# developer, right, then this is the roadmap. This is the roadmap, to start with, or this is the roadmap you have to follow. So for now, we need to go and start with the first step, that is C# fundamentals. So the first step in order to learn C# is you need to go and install Visual Studio. So go to visualstudio.com. You can see that I have opened visualstudio.com on my computer over here. So go to visualstudio.com and install Visual Studio Community Edition. You can see over here we have something called as the Download Community Edition. There are other 2 buttons over here, but leave them for this moment, and download Community Edition. Once you download Community Edition and once you install in your computer, in your program files, you should see a menu something like this. This indicates that Visual Studio has been installed successfully in your computer. So let us go ahead and start Visual Studio, and let us try to create a small C# program. Now, once you start Visual Studio, you will find a very complex application. You will find lots of menus and lots of things out here. First thing, let me tell you that even a senior professional guy who is working on C# and Visual Studio, from all of these menus, he hardly uses 10 to 15 menus, hardly, right? So don't worry too much. So just follow what I'm doing and don't start looking here and there. Probably you will get discouraged with the complexity, right? So as I've said that as a senior person, also I have been using 10-15 things again and again, but not all of them. So don't worry about it. The next thing is that if you say that you want to create a C# program, that means you want to create a project, right? A project, it can be a Windows project, it can be a web project, it can be a console application. So there are different types of projects. It can be a mobile project, right? So the first thing in Visual Studio, what you need to do is you need to go and create a project. So you can see that there is a new project menu over here. So if you want, you can start from here, or you can start from file, new project. Okay. So I'm going to go and create a project. Now, once you do a new project, you will find lots of things over here. You will find Visual C#, you'll find Visual Basic, F sharp, and so many things. Don't get distracted with all the other menus. Ensure that you have selected Visual C Sharp, right? And in that, let us go ahead and create a Windows application. So select Windows and select console. So ensure that you have selected Visual C Sharp. Do not select Visual Basic. We will go into something else. So select Windows and select console application, and let us give a name here saying this is lab 1, right? This is the lab 1, right? These things what you see over here are termed as templates. So I'll come to that. Okay, so remember, now we are creating a console application. As I've said, there are various types of application. You can see that you can create Windows, you can create web, you can create, if you go down below, there is also mobile somewhere, right? iOS, you can see that's what it is, mobile, that is Android. So there are various types of application you can create, but for now we will limit ourselves to console. What is a console application? A console application is an application which runs through command prompt. So basically a console application does not have any kind of a UI. It runs in this black DOS window like this, right? But from the learning perspective, I always like to start with a console application first, and then we can move towards Windows and web and complicated things, right? So let us select console and let us press OK. Now once you press OK, you would see a very complex code here. So you can see that some 16-17 lines of code you can see here, which he has put forward on the screen. At the left hand side, what you see here, 1 2 3 4, these are line numbers. Okay, so these are line numbers saying that which code is on which line. Okay, but before I go in depth into explaining this code, I need to make you understand 3 concepts: language, framework, and IDE. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. So before even I move ahead to make you understand this source code over here, let me explain you the difference between all of these 3. Now, a language is nothing but a programming language like C Sharp, wherein you can go and write if conditions, for loops, invoke things, consume things, and so on, right? So basically a language has syntaxes. For example, what you see over here, this whole source code is written in C Sharp language, right? So one is a language. But when you go to create professional applications, you need a lot of things. For example, you would like to send an email, or you would like to make a database connection. So these are some of the very common things you would be doing again and again. So if there was some kind of a library, a ready-made library, which I can use in my C Sharp, I can invoke in my C Sharp language, that would really improve my productivity, isn't it? And that's where we have something called as the .NET Framework. .NET Framework, when you install your Visual Studio 2015, you will see that in the C Windows, Microsoft .NET, you would see there are lots of DLLs out here, and with a lot of versions of framework. So you can see that .NET was actually introduced in 2003 formally. So from that point onwards, we have 1.1, 2.0, 3.0, 3.5, 4.0, latest one is 4.5, right? So each one of these versions, you will see that there are some ready-made components. For example, let us say I want to go and connect to database, right? So for database, you have system.data.dll. So this component has that code, which will help you to connect to RDBMS, right? So one is that, yes, we have a C# language. The second one is we need some ready-made components, right? Some reusable components, and that is what is there in the framework. The .NET Framework is nothing but it is a reusable library which has a lot of things, which can make your life easy when you create an application. And second, this .NET Framework also goes and compiles your code. So in other words, when you write something in C#, right, if you want to execute inside your machine, you have to compile that program. So even the .NET Framework has a JIT compiler, which I will talk later on, which compiles your source code into machine language. Now, to get this framework, to write this language, to compile, it is a lot of work, right? And if I tell you to do this manually, it is very, very difficult. And that's where we have the IDE. IDE is nothing but, it is a tool which will actually help you to write the syntaxes, which will actually help you to compile the program, run the application, publish. So with that, your development life becomes very easy. So remember these three things. What you see out here is a C# language. Internally, the C# language uses the .NET Framework components, right? So .NET Framework is the core thing, and C# uses these components, and IDE ties both of them together so that we can complete our development faster. Now, when you talk about a complex project, it will not have just only one file, right, of source code. It can have multiple files of source code. It can have configurations and a lot of things, right? So definitely, when you say a project, it will have many files with configurations, with resources and text files and data files and whatnot, right? So we need a better way of managing this project. So what they have done, when you go and you create a project, they create two things for you. One is they create a solution, and inside the solution, they create a project. So if you see, I have gone to that solution explorer by using this view solution explorer. So when you go over here, you will see that we have this lab 1, and this lab 1 actually belongs to solution. So you can have multiple projects. Remember, this is a project, this is a solution, this is a project, this is a solution, and inside the project you can have a lot of files. For example, the code, this code where we have now is in program.cs. You can see that there is also a configuration file here called as app config, which is an XML file which can help you to provide configurations to your application, right? And also you can see that there is a references section over here. So in this references section, it is saying that your project is referring what components from the .NET framework. So for example, you can see the system.data. So if you go to the properties here, it says that, okay, this project is referencing system.data, which is at this moment on this folder, right? On this file and this folder. So basically your project is nothing but, a C# project is nothing but, it has many files which can have code files. So code files means program.cs. It can have configuration files. It also shows you that which libraries of your .NET framework you have referenced. And this is termed as a project. And a solution is nothing but, it is a combination of projects. So you can have lab 1, you can have lab 2, lab 3, and so on. So you can have 4 or 5 projects in a solution, and every project will have multiple files. Now, whenever you write any C# code, it will always have this kind of a structure. At the top, you will have a namespace. So you can see this, I'm able to expand and contrast the source code. So, if I just want to look at the class code, I can look at this. If I want to just look at the namespace code, I can look like this, right? So, it has given me a nice provision. This Visual Studio IDE has given me a nice provision, which will help me to expand and collapse the code. So whenever we write any C# code, right, it is always written inside a method. So at the top, we have the namespace. Inside the namespace, we have class, and inside the class, we have method. So you always write the code inside a method, but a method will always belong to a class, and a class will belong to a namespace. And one namespace can have multiple classes, and one class can have multiple methods. So I will talk about namespace and classes more in object-oriented programming concept, but for now, just remember that over here we have a namespace inside which we have a class program, and then inside that we have a method called as main. So now let me go and start putting comments, so that you can understand this source code well, right? Now, what is a comment? A comment is nothing but it is a line of text which you put inside the code, but it will not be checked for syntaxes. It is only for documentation purpose. So to write a comment, you have to put a slash, a double slash. So I will say here, first point to remember, point 1 to remember, is that you have a hierarchy of namespace. Inside the namespace you have a class, inside the class you have methods, and inside the method is where you go and you write your C# code, right? You can see the this method over here, it is named as main, right? So point number 2 to remember here is that this main is the first entry point of your program. So main means this is the first thing that will execute. For now you can neglect this word static. I will talk more about the static keyword later on. Okay, now as I've said that this void main is a method. So a method is nothing but where you can have group of C# statements. So in this I can go and write 2 statements or 3 statements of C#. So a method helps you to group a C# statement. Now you can see that at the top we have something called as using. So what I will do is at this moment I will just delete this using. Okay, let me explain the using later on. Okay, so I'm going to go and just delete it. Okay, now when this method is executed, if you want, you can also pass parameters to your program. So this string args here is nothing but parameters. So point number 3 to remember is that this args is a parameter. Okay, so args, in args we get parameters. In args we have parameters. So let us go ahead and write a simple hello inside this void main. Now I would like to bring to your notice that if you very closely look at the .NET framework components, so you can see that everything has a system at the top, and then after the system there is something called as activities or collections, and then again there is something. So remember that the complete .NET framework is organized in like system.collections.concurrent, system.this.that. So at the top of .NET, the main object of .NET, that is the word. I will talk more about objects later on, but the main thing at the top is system. So now if I want to go and print a hello world on the console, I have to say here system.console.writeLine. Look at this. Can you see this color convention? You can see that the namespace is having a black color, right? So it's a black over here. This class has a kind of a light aqua color. So you can see the console has a light aqua color, and again the method has a black color. So basically this system is the namespace. If you move your mouse, it says that system is a namespace. The console is a class. You can see that when you move your mouse, there's a small tooltip which comes. It says that the console is a class, and when you move your mouse, it says write is a method, right? So I will say write line hello my first program. So if I put in simple words, what it also means is that even the core .NET framework follows this hierarchy of namespace, class and method, right? But now think about this, if you're going to go and write such big lines of code like system.console.writeLine and so on, it would be very, very difficult after a certain time to read the code, right? Because if you see here, some of those namespaces are quite long. Look at this: system.componentModel.composition.registration. This method. So writing such big lines of code would be difficult, right? So what you can do is you can go and type at the top using system. So if I do this, then I don't have to write the system. I can just start from console. So this code here says that import. So this is point number 4. Point 4. Import the namespace system. That's what this line of code says here, right? Great. So now let us go ahead and build our application. What do I mean by build our application? When you write any program, either in C# or Java or C++, at the end of the day, it has to be compiled to a machine language, or else you won't be able to run the code, right? And that process is termed as build. So in order to build, you can go and click on this build here, and you can click on build solution, right? So let us click on build solution. Once you do a build solution, you can see that there is an output window over here, and in this output window it says that the build has started, what did it build, and where is the exe created at this moment, and it says build has succeeded. So this output window, what you see over here is nothing but a small window, where it says what is happening with the program, right? So if you want to see the output window, click on view output. Again, anytime you want to go and see the output window, view output, right? So now it says that it has created the lab1.exe in the bin folder in debug. Okay, so how do I go over there? So let us go to view solution explorer. Now this code is going to be saved in a certain folder in a file, right? So in order to know that where it is, you can see that you can right click on this project and say open folder in file explorer. Right click on this project and say open folder in file explorer. So let us go here. In this you can see all your source code, program.cs, and your app config. Now when a program gets compiled in Visual Studio, it throws the compiled code in this bin directory. So you can see that in the bin directory there is a debug folder, and in that you can see this lab1.exe. You can see that there are other things also with this. We will talk about these other things later on, but you can see that there is a lab1.exe over here. So let us go and try to run this. So I'm going to go and double click on this. You can see that it starts and it closes, it starts and closes, right? So I'm not able to see the output. And why is it happening? Because over here what happens is, it first comes inside the static void main, it executes the console.write line, and after this I have not given anything to stop the program, so it just runs and goes off, right? So what I will do is, after this, let me just say here console.read. I'm saying that read some input and wait for some time, right? So let me go again and build. There again, build succeeded. Good. Let me go back to my debug directory. So where is my debug? View solution explorer, right click, open folder in file explorer, bin, debug. Right. So there it is, your first program of C# with the hello world. Congratulations if you have come till here. Okay, good. Now if you want to pass arguments to this program, you can always go and pass arguments from the command prompt, and you can pass multiple arguments. You can see this square bracket here, it indicates an array, right? So you can have multiple inputs. So let us say that if you have the first input, you can say that display the hello my first program, and then add to it. Add means concatenate. Take this sentence and concatenate with the first argument that is passed, then concatenate a space. Let me indent this, and then afterwards concatenate the second argument. Look at this sentence. So this one is a constant string, what we have in the program. After that I am saying please concatenate whatever is the first argument that is coming from the input, and then concatenate a space, and then concatenate the second argument. Now if you see here, the first argument here is 0 indexed. So here I did not say 1, I said 0. So remember, the first argument which you pass over here, you have to refer in your program by using 0 first. So it is 0 index. This is termed as 0 indexing. 0 indexing means that even though that is the first argument here, inside the program you have to refer 0. The second argument is 1, and then 2 and 3 and so on, right? So let us go and build this program. So there it is, rebuild all, and succeeded. So one succeeded, nothing failed, nothing skipped. Very good. Now in order to pass argument, we have to run this program via the command prompt. So let us go ahead and say Control R, that means Windows R, and type cmd in the run. And let us go to the folder where our exe is. So I'm going to go and browse to the folder. So I will go here and say cd, and I will paste this folder path. So if I do a directory, I can see lab1. So I'll say lab1. Look at this. So lab1. In this, I want to pass the first argument. So xyz is my first argument. Then I want to pass the second argument, test. Look at this. In lab1, I'm passing the first argument. Let me just expand this. Okay. So first argument, mark. First argument is xyz, and then the second argument is test. So let us press enter. So there it is. You can see now what it has done. It has taken hello my first program and then concatenated the first argument. So what is the first argument? xyz, and then it concatenated the second argument, that is test, with a space in between. This is the space. So hello my first program, argument, space, and the second program. But now when you create a real-time application, people will not pass data via arguments. They would run the program and they would like to enter data via keyboard, isn't it? So that means that we should allow the user to take data via the application, right? So for that, whatever data comes from the keyboard, we have to store it in a variable and then do some operations using that data, right? So in order to create a variable is nothing but it is a small memory allocation where you can go and store data. So now let us say I want to go and store a person's name. So for that, I will go and I will create a variable which is of type string. Type string means it can have numerics, it can have numbers or anything, right? So I would like to take a name of a person, I would like to take a age of a person, right? So age. Okay, so in order to take the input, I have to use console.read line. So read line actually reads the data from the keyboard and write line writes the data to the console, right? So I will say here in this name to a console.read line, get data into the name for the name, and then for the age again get data using console.read line. So console.read line here again, I'll just put point number 5, right? Read line takes data from keyboard and write line writes data. Okay, so we have two things over here, right? So I will say over here hello whatever is the name. So let me concatenate the name and let me concatenate the age, right? Great. So now I will build the project and now let us see what happens. Now till now what I was doing is I was building the project, I was going to bin directory, I was building the project, I was going to bin directory. Now this is tiresome, isn't it, right? So what you can do is you can run the application right from Visual Studio itself by doing Control F5. So you have to press the control button and you have to press F5. Control plus F5 both together. You can see now my application is running, right? But now the problem is that I'm not getting idea, that basically is this to enter the name or is this to enter the age, isn't it? So let us do like this. Let us go ahead here and I will say here console.writeLine, enter name, console.writeLine, enter age, right? So now again let us do a control F5, control F5, control F5. Again I repeat just to make sure that you know what you're doing. So there it is. Now this makes sense, right? So end user can know that yes, he has to enter the name. So I'll say Shiv, enter the age. I will say 12. So hello Shiv and the age. Great, right? So control F5. So Raju, 20. hello Raju 20. Great. So you can see now we have a very small application which we have created, where a person can put his name, he can put his age, and then we display the details on the screen. But now there is a slight problem with this program, or I'll say there is a bug in this program. Can you guess what is the bug? The bug is that, when someone says, okay, enter name, I will say Shiv. When he says enter age, I can go and put any kind of character which is not acceptable, and my application accepts that, and it displays hello Shiv, and the age is a junk, right? So I need to somehow ensure that in age, we can't put non-numeric characters, means we can't put A, B, C, D and so on, right? So for that, we need to go and define this variable's data type as int. So string, it is for when you say string, it means it can have non-numeric values, but when you say int, it will only have numeric values. You can see now it is showing me a red sign over here saying that I cannot take this kind of data which is nothing, right? So I can take 0, but I cannot take such kind of data, right? Now whenever you have errors in your program, Visual Studio is very awesome. It just shows you these errors in this red zigzag signs over here. So it says that there is an error here, and it says that I cannot convert this string to an int. What does it mean? In other words, it says that when a person puts data from the keyboard, he can put a text, right? So this basically the console.read line, you can see over here, it is returning a string. Look at this, it is returning a string, but a string cannot go into the age because age is an int. Again I repeat, this read line actually gets data in a string format. You can see this read line, console.read line, whenever reads data from the keyboard, converts it into a string data type, right? And this string data type, I cannot move it to a integer data type of age. So for that, what I will do, I will say that convert it. So convert dot to int, convert this input to age. So this convert is a class, you can see, and to int is a method which will convert the string into age. In case the conversion fails, then the application will crash. So if you see now, if I do a control F5, remember control F5, yeah. So I'll say Shiv and I'll say 12. This is good. But now if I try to put something else, let us say I put Shiv, and if I try to put a non-numeric data over here, you can see that he has crashed, and he says that I cannot convert this string into the integer, and it says system.format exception. And this is good. I do understand the application has crashed and we have to take care, but what I'm saying is that at least the application is not taking data which is not proper. And just to quickly handle that error, we will have a separate lecture on error handling, but just to quickly handle that error, you can use the try catch. So try catch statement. This try catch says that inside this try start and the end of this try block, if there is any exception which occurs, right, I will just throw it to this catch. So if there is any exception which happens in the try block, right, the control will just come in the catch, and in the catch I will just say console.writeLine e dot, I'll just say please try again, please try invalid data, right? So this is a quick way of handling it. We will go into exception handling afterwards, but quickly to ensure that our application does not crash. So I have written in the try statement the complete code, where I expect the error can occur, and then in the catch statement I have written how to handle it, right? So now if I run this, if I do a control F5, so Shiv, and if I try to do something funny, it says bad, right? Now you can see that drastic error message, which was coming previously, it is not coming now. So that is good, and I will just exit. Great. Now I would like to also point out here something about the data types. If you see at this moment, my program is using string, it is using integer, and then there are other data types like boolean, double, decimal, and lot, right? So what I would suggest is that please go to the fundamental section. So there is a fundamental section, .NET fundamentals, and in that I have created a 20 minutes video, approximately a 20 minutes video, which is only on data types. Oh, it's almost a 40 minutes video. You can see almost a 40 minutes video on data types, because what we are doing here is we are doing coding, programming, right? But at the same time, we have to also understand the internals of .NET, isn't it? So it is not just that, okay, you can write a for loop, you can write a if condition, that means you become a developer. You have to also understand the fundamentals, right? So at this moment, I have just said here int, but this, int, also has other variations like int 32, int 16, and then we have double, then we have single, then we have decimal, we have float, we have string, and so many data types are there, right? So what I would suggest, please go to through this 40 minutes video, where we have explained in detail what are the different data types and in which scenarios you should use them, right? So that is a small homework. You can do it parallelly. But let us continue with our learning, and let us move ahead. And also I would like to go and put some validation. For example, I would like to say that if the name is not proper, means if the name is not entered, then do not continue with the program. So I can say here name dot length, if it is equal to 0, then I will say console dot write line name is required, right? And after that, I don't want to continue with the program, so I will just say console dot read, and from here I will just say return. Why am I doing a console dot read? So that the end user can see my error message, and after that I'm saying return. If I say return from here, that means that the remaining part of the code will not execute, right? In the same way, I would like to also go and put some validation for the age. So for the age, I would like to say that if the age is entered above 100, because a person who is staying above 100, probably he will not use my software, right? So if the age is above 100, then I will say here, age is not proper, right? So just some validation on the age part as well. So the if condition, which I'm using currently for checking my validations, the way it is written, if starts with a round bracket, then the condition, and then what you want to write, right? And so that's it, right? So let me go and do a control F5. Let us see if this works or not. So control F5, that my program is running. So if I don't put a name, you can see it says, oh, name is required, and it stops my program. If I go and put some bad age, like let us say 900, it says age is not proper and it does not move ahead. But if I put things properly, so if I say here Shiv and the age is 40, it says yes, hello Shiv 40, and that's right. So if you want to go and write a if condition, if, then the condition, and then what you want to execute if this condition is true. Now let us say that we want to go and add in one go 2 or 3 records. So I want to go and add like 2 or 3 records in one go, rather than going and running the exe again and again. If I can get some options saying, okay, enter how many records you want to enter, and then after that, if there is a loop, which can keep looping until I enter all the records, right? So let us go ahead and write a for loop. So I'll say here console dot write line, enter how many records you want to enter, right? And after this I will say int num records is equal to console dot read line. And again, remember, this is a numeric, so we need to go and do a convert, which I just explained. So convert this to int 16. Now remember that all this to int 16 and integer int 32 all has been explained in that data type video. So I would suggest that in case some of the syntaxes, if you're not following, please go and refer that video. Okay, so over here now I'll say, okay, go and run this whole try loop. So from here till the catch, right, I would like to go and run this complete for loop over here. So I would like to go and run this whole thing. Okay, and once it is done, after that I would like to do a console.read. So once this for loop is finished, I would like to do a console.read. Okay, so over here I will say, now I will create a temporary variable. So this for takes 3 parameters, or 3 things in actually. One is it takes that from where you want to start your counting. So I'll say I want to start my counting from 0 till what you want to go. So I want to go till this num record, and I want to increment 1 by 1. So I will say I++. Great. So now let us go ahead and run this. So the first thing he will ask me is that, okay, enter how many records. So let us say I want to enter 2 records. So first record is Shiv. This is the age. Now the second record I will say Raju, and the age is again, let's say 10, and finish. So let us try with 3 records. So how many records you want to enter? 3. So Shiv 10, and then I will say, okay, Raju 90, test 10, right? So you can see now that my for loop is running, and it is allowing me to add multiple records in one go. Now also a very just a small note, you can see this I++ here. Now what this I++ does, it goes and it increments the value of I, but also you can go and write the syntax as ++I. Even this is perfectly right. Okay, so I would suggest you that if you can go and watch this small video over here, what is the difference between I++ and I. So very quickly, this video over here, in this section, we have what is the difference between I++ and ++I. So just if you can go and watch the video, you can understand the difference between post increment and pre increment. So that is one thing. But now the other thing is, when I look at this code, I find this code to be extremely complex and extremely, how do you say, it is all muddled up, isn't it? For example, let us say that if I have 5 to 10 more properties, then I would end up into so many variables over here, like name, age, address, and so on, right? So it would be great, if we can, if we, rather than thinking in terms of like name, age, and variables, right? How about saying that, okay, there is a person. So there is a person in the real world, and this person has a name, he has an age, he has an address where he stays, and so on, right? And that's where we have something called as object-oriented programming. So what we will do is to have such kind of a thought, where we say that rather than thinking in terms of individual variables, right, we think in terms of classes. Okay, so we say that, okay, there is a in a real world there is a thing called as person. So in our code we have a class called as person, and this person has a name, right? And this person has a age, right? And this person has a address, and this person also has a salary, right? So for salary I will use decimal. Decimal has a high precision. Again, if you have not watched the video of data type, which I've said previously, then probably you won't understand when I said decimal over here. So I would suggest that please go and watch the video of the data types, right? So you can see that I have put up a class person, and inside this class I will go and add a method. So I will go and add a method. So this method will tell me that if this person object or this person is valid or not, right? So all these if conditions, which are going to get scattered over here, these validations, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go and put them into one class. So over here I'm saying, okay, if the name dot length is not proper, then this is not valid. If the age is greater than 100, it is not valid, right? Or else it's valid. So I'll say here, if this is this, then return true. If the age is greater than 100, then return true again, right? Sorry, false. I'm sorry, what am I doing? Okay, false. And too much of coding. If the name is this, again it is valid, false, or else if everything is okay, then the return is true. Remember that the place where we have the return statement, from here afterwards the below codes do not execute. So from here it just exits. Okay, the below codes do not execute. Okay, so you can see that what I've done is, rather than having hanging variables, I have just created a class. You can think about class as a template, which represents a real world identity like person, car, accounts, journal, manager, right? Something, right? So here we have the person. So now what I can do here is, now remember that this is just a template. It is just a template. It is lying in your hard disk. And if you want to use it in your program, right, what you need to do is you need to go and create an object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and delete all this, and I will be replacing it with the object. And what I will do is I will create a separate copy of the class, a copy of this file, because must be in case you want to refer the source code later on. So I'll just copy this and I will paste it here, so that in case if somebody wants to refer it, he can refer it. Okay, so I'm going to go and delete this from here. So what I've done is, the old source code is still there in this program copy.cs, and this code I will give for download, right? So in case somebody wants to refer the old code, so here it is. Okay, I'm going to go and comment all this code over here, because you can see that it is giving me duplicate class name errors, right? So I will be commenting that, and I'm here now. So over here now I'll say, so go ahead and create the object of person. So you can see now, remember, person is a class, a template, and if you want to use it in your program anywhere, you have to create an object. And to create an object, you need to go and use this new keyword, right? So over here I will say obj dot first is the name, so console dot read line, right? And then we have the age, convert dot to int, and console dot read line, right? So that is the age, and I can just say console dot write line, name, enter the name, and enter age. So those all are there, but you can see that now this code is much better as compared to the previous code, because now I'm able to associate with the real life objects. So I know that I'm creating a person object, I'm setting his name and so on, right? And then we will display somewhere here console dot write line, name of the person is obj dot name, and age is obj dot age, right? So you can see now, once you start putting things into classes and objects, it becomes very simple, neat and clean. And also my suggestion is, in order to understand these classes and objects, right, you need to understand object-oriented programming concepts, in detail. So what my suggestion is, after this video, right, once this video finishes, and if you have some time in between, please go through this object-oriented programming Q&A video series, where we have explained what are classes, what are objects, what is inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, interfaces, abstract classes, shadowing, and so many things, right? So object-oriented programming is one of the big concept by itself. So I would suggest to go and watch this series over here. But for now, this is more than enough. So if you want, you can delay watching that series, but at some moment of time, must be after 2 hours of lecture or 3 hours of lecture, whenever you feel that this fundamentals are becoming heavy, I would suggest to please go and watch that video series, right? So this should work now. So what will happen is this for loop will run and a person object will be created, and after that we will enter the name, we'll enter the age, and the person object data will be displayed, right? So if I do a control F5, so let us say I'll say I want to put 2 records. So that is the first one, Shiv 10, Raju 10, right? There is one more problem. If you remember, we had created the is valid function, the valid function, right? So must be we can also use the valid function. So I'll say, okay, if the obj is valid, then only go and do a console write line of the age, right? Or else just say that it is invalid data, right? Or I'll just go ahead and say it is invalid data. So that valid function actually returns true and false, if it returns false, if you either don't enter a proper name or a age, and it returns true, if everything is proper, right? So here it goes, right? So there it is. But now if I enter something bad, let us say above 100, it says invalid data, right? Also, I would like to talk about 2 concepts here, or I'll say I would like to introduce 2 vocabularies over here. One is a method and the other one is a function. Now a method, as I've said previously, is nothing but it has it has a group of C# code. You can see that this static void main is a method, right? And it has code inside it. Okay. A method does not return anything. For example, look at this main method. It is returning void. Void means nothing. But if you remember, we had created a method inside the person class, which which was returning true and false. So this valid is not a method, it is a function. So remember that when a method returns something, we term it as a function, and when the method does not return anything, then that's a pure method. Okay, so this is a pure method. So that brings us to the first 1 hour of the training of C#. So if you remember, we said that this is our roadmap, right? So we have completed the first 1 hour from C# fundamentals, and in this 1 hour, I think we covered a lot of topics. We saw that where to get Visual Studio from. We saw that what is Visual Studio, and then what is a language, what is a framework. We created a small console application, where we did validations, where we did a for loop, where we did a if condition, and so many things, right? Now, the next video is on delegates, events, and threads. So the next video is again going to go in depth into the C# fundamentals, and we are going to discuss about 3 things: delegates, events, and threads. Now, before you move to that video, I would suggest that please go and watch the video on IL code, CLR, CTS, and code access security. Okay. So what are these? Now what happens is, when you compile your program, right? So when you compile your program, you see this lab1.exe which gets created in the debug folder, right? Now a lot of you people must be thinking that this is the machine compiled code, right? A lot of people who are coming from C++ background, or must be whatever things you have heard about compiling, a lot of people think that this exe is a fully compiled machine language. but it is not. It is actually a partially compiled code, a half compiled code, right? So what I would suggest, go to the .NET fundamental section and go and watch these two videos, IL code, CLR, CLS, and JIT. So this video I have divided into two parts. One is of 9 minutes and the other one is of 10 minutes. So remember that this whole series is going to work like this. One is we're going to do practicals, and at the same time parallelly we're going to go and see individual fundamentals as well. Because what my understanding is that if you want to become a true C# developer, it is not about just writing if conditions and for loops and declaring variables, but you should also know internally how C# works. And my whole goal of this training is to make you a C# professional developer, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and continue with this project of this what you call person details. But at the same time, I want to ensure that wherever there are important fundamentals, which has to be given time, I will pinpoint and say, okay, look at this video. Okay. So we will be doing the Learn C# series, but at the side by side, we're going to have small Q&A videos, which will help you to understand, the fundamentals in more depth. So I'll be going and uploading this source code in the Questpond video account as well, right? Now, it's almost, we have completed 1 hour of training, and we have more 7 hours pending in this Learn C# fundamentals, right? Now, just as a token of gift, because to hear a voice for 1 hour, and especially a voice like me, it is very, very difficult, right? So here's a small gift, which I want to give you, because I think that if you have reached to this 1 hour, so here is a small C# quick notes document which I have, in which, this is a 100-page document, wherein what I've done is I have explained concepts in a question answer format. So like, what is IL code? IL code is this. What is garbage collector? It does this, right? So it's a Q&A book, right? And it's a 100-page Q&A book. So if you really want this book, what you need to do is you need to go and share this video on your Facebook account or on your Twitter account and mail us the link of your share to questpond@questpond.com. So if you do this, we will email you this book, which has 100 pages, in which we have short questions and answers, which can help you to quickly revise things before interview of a fundamentals, right? So I hope that you enjoyed this first lab of 1 hour, and the next lab is on delegates and events, right? Thank you very much.